The first step that we want to do is to get our 2x4s and cut them to the proper length. These are a little under 6 feet tall. And then after this, we will be marking out exactly where we want the rungs to go. So this is the bottom of the ladder. There's going to be about a foot of space between the bottom of the ladder and the first rung. So you can see that I've marked out the very center all the way up the 2x4. And then wherever there's going to be a rung, I've made a mark crosswise. So there's 1, 2, and all the way up. This is marked out for 5 rungs total. So we'll do the other one, and then we can start drilling holes. So this is the beginning of one hole. Now I'm not going to be drilling these all the way through. You certainly could if you wanted to. I like the look of it with the rung not going all the way through the ladder. I think that looks better. So you can see I just lined up the center of the drill bit on that intersection of those lines I made. And that's about 3/4 of an inch hole. And that's probably about as far as I'll go. I don't think we'll have to drill it any further. Once you get some glue in there, that's going to be nice and sturdy. And this isn't going to be something that people are going to be standing on. It's just for blankets, so it'll certainly hold the weight of the blankets. And it's simple as that. There's our hole. Now we have all 5 holes drilled out. So here's the dry fit. It's looking pretty good. It's actually starting to look like a ladder. So from here on out, the next steps will be just finish giving everything a quick sand. I've already sanded everything once, but we'll go over it once more with an even higher grit, probably like 220 grit. Just make it really nice and smooth, and then we can stain and finish. So one method I found that really helps when staining and finishing the rungs of the ladder is to just take a scrap 2x4, and I drilled a bunch of holes in it, more than I need, but I can stick the dowels into the holes that I've drilled here, and it's really easy to just kind of let them sit in these while the stain and the finish dries on them. I found this to be really helpful in all the previous ones that I've built. I think that's a good quick tip. The stain that I'm going to be staining this ladder is this Minwax Classic Gray 271. Very simple to use. I've used it in the past. It's your typical stain. Wipe it on, wipe it off. Multiple coats if you want the color to be darker. This is the color that the person I'm building this for requested, and I'm going to meet that request. Okay, so after one coat of stain, this is what we've got. The ends up at the top don't need to be perfect because they are going to be glued and down into the sockets, so not as worried about those. Same as the other ends, same idea. So we'll let the stain sit for 5 to 15 minutes and then wipe off. Okay, so I've got one coat freshly on the one side of the ladder. The coat that I did on the rungs, I let it sit for about 10 minutes and then I wiped it off. And the person I'm making this for liked where it was at, so I'm going to leave it like that. We're not going to do a second coat. And we're going to do the same with the ladder. So we're going to paint on the stain, and we're going to let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then we'll wipe it off. And as long as the customer still approves, that's how we're going to leave it. And then from there, it's just some polyurethane. One other word about stain is this wood, I did not use any sort of pre-wood treatment. I just sanded the wood down to the suggested grit for the stain, and wiped it on and let it sit for 10 minutes, and now I'm wiping it off. If you use a pre-stain conditioner, it's going to affect the way that the stain absorbs into the wood, so you may want to, if whatever route you go, you may want to do a test piece and just make sure that you're going to get the results you want before you put it on your project. Otherwise, you run the risk of having a project that turns out much differently than you anticipated. Now that all the staining is done, the last steps is going to be finishing. We're going to use lacquer and then we'll glue it up. You could really do the glue and lacquer in any order. I do think it's easier to do the lacquer first, but that's just my opinion, and it's really close now. So in this case I've decided to glue it up before doing the finish. So you can see I went through and we've got glue in all the holes, and I try to get it up onto the sides as well. That's really going to help it stick. Then the other thing is to actually put glue on the end of the dowel and help the pores of the wood soak up some glue, and then put it in. That will just give us a stronger bond. So we'll go all the way up the ladder, get them all glued. So I've got one side of the rungs all in there with the glue. The last thing we're going to do is put some more on these sides. Same idea as before, just letting the glue get down into the pores of the wood. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it to be getting in the wood. Alright, so we've got glue on top of all these dowels. Now we'll just lift up the other side and put it on top. Make sure the ladder is square, get clamps on it, and let the glue dry. The glue is dry, just took it out of the clamps. Ladder's nice and square. Now all that's left is finishing. We'll probably put a coat of poly, possibly lacquer, but we're so close. So here's the ladder standing up. I've got it propped up against the bench. So like I said before, it's a little over 6 feet tall. And total with the side rails all the way, it's about 20 inches, which is just about how he designed it, so that's perfect. We're ready for the final step. So we've got some paper spread out across the workbench, and we're going to be brushing on this brush on lacquer. This is what the client wanted, so that's what we're going to do. And this will be the very last step. It might take multiple coats, but just going to follow the directions on the can because that's always the best way to do it. So we've got one coat of finish on here. You can see the glisten in the lighting. This particular lacquer suggests 2 hours between coats. So we're going to let this sit for 2 hours and come back and do another coat. And we'll see how it looks after the second coat. The can does recommend at least 3 coats total. So we'll probably end up doing another one 2 hours after that one. But we'll see how it looks. So far we're doing great. I would recommend, if you have them, putting those little paint teepee blocks underneath to allow the piece to sit up off your work surface a little bit. That way you don't have to worry about it drying to the paper or drying to anything else. But that's completely up to you. So we got the second coat of finish on. We're so close. We've got them resting on these little blocks to help it dry and not stick to the plastic. After the first coat it stuck to the paper, so we made some adjustments and it's looking really good now. If you have some of those little painting triangles, I recommend those. I have some, couldn't find mine, so I'm just using some little blocks, but they work the same.